Click here to subscribe our channel and do not forget to press the bell icon to get regular updates of our video. Hello friends, good evening to all of you. So I am back with another video on Sociology option subject for UPSC CSE means examination. In this video we are going to cover the formal and informal organization of work under works and economic life of paper 1 topic 6. So friend, please do these 3 hours, share as much as possible so that more and more people will get benefited. Comment and like the video and ask any doubt if you have. And now you can also follow us on FB page, that is facebook.com/Unorthodox Academy. So friend, as you know that we are covering slot 3, work, economic life, agriculture and industry, and at present we are covering paper 1 topic 6, that is work and economic life. We have covered first topics, and in this video we are going to cover formal and informal organization of work. So basically the organization is a group with an identifiable membership that engages in concerted collective action to achieve common purpose. So basically there are two kind of workplaces, and these are the first, that is organized sector, which we also say as formal sector or basically formal organization of work, and the second one is the unorganized sector, that is informal sector or informal organization of work. So workplaces in the organized sector basically governed by various laws of the land such as company law, tax law and labor laws, and the labor laws seek to protect the interest of labor and prevent their exploitation, and as a result the workers of organized sector are protected, hence they are called the organized sector labor or the formal sector labor, and all the labor unprotected by laws are basically the informal sector labor or basically unorganized sector labor. So basically what does labor laws do? So basically labor laws specify minimum wages to be paid to workers, maximum work hours per day and employment conditions, and informal sector labor does not get these protections, hence the condition of work life and lifestyle of informal sector or informal sector labor is a matter of concern. So according to Indian Ministry of Labor report in 2012, there were around 487 million labor forces, and of this only 28 million, that is 7.5%, were in the formal sector, and hence about 92.5% of labor force is untouched by the fair labor laws. So now first we see the formal sector. So basically the urban formal sector consists of the organized sector and can be defined as a sector consisting of activities carried out by the corporate enterprises and the government at the center, state and local levels solely with the help of wage paid labor, which in a great measure is unionized. So official statistics regarding the formal sector is available through data on the organized sector, and this comprises of the enterprise and information, for example statistical data on their activities that are collected on a regular basis, for example on registered manufacturing units in the urban areas of India. So basically the manufacturing units are all manufacturing, processing, repair and maintenance services, registered or not registered under the Factory Act 1948 and now at present the Companies Act of 2013, and this pertains to the organized sector. So that is the factories employing 10 or more or less than 10 workers and using power, or employing 20 or more or less than 20 workers without power in the reference year belong to the registered manufacturing sector. So the formal organizations are characterized by the following characteristics. So the first characteristic of it is that these activities can only be started through the formal procedure of rules and regulation. License from the competent authority is mandatory in this, and the organization are bound to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the law of land like labor laws, working condition, etc. And the certain remunerations are essential to provide for employees like social security, provident fund, that is PF, in the paid holidays and etc. So the trade unions are also formed in these organizations, which gives the more security to the labors of the manufacturing unit. So the fifth one is there should be there is basically proper eligibility and formal degrees and prerequisite to enter in those fields, and in the case of any casualty or other irregularities, the employer is liable to pay to employees. So in sociology, the Max Weber was the first sociologist who discussed formal organization or bureaucracy at length. And in formal organization, everyone holds some office and their position and authority is judged by the office, and every post is interchanged in a mutual relations of command and obedience, and it is a transparent system of super and subordinations. And industries, bureaucracy, political parties are basically the example of some formal organizations. So now we see the informal sectors. So basically, J. Keith Hart, basically an anthropologist, while working for a research project of the ILO, that is International Labour Organization, studied African societies or labor market in Accra and coined the term informal sector in 1973, which was later on popularized by ILO. So Hart has basically noticed some certain characteristics of the informal sector that makes workers in this sector different from the formal sectors, and these are: first, they have the low levels of skill. So workers in this sector have low levels of education and thus they have low skills, and whereas in the formal sector they have higher degrees of skill and their position in the labor is better. And the second is the easy entry. So getting work in the informal sector is comparatively easier than in the formal sector, and Hart study shows that that any able-bodied person, irrespective of the skill possessed, can become a day laborer. So with minimum investment, the same persons can become a street vendor and sell his or her wares at the market, and the person need not have money to invest in a shop. So in this way, the informal sector is able to absorb more workers who could normally not get any work because they are either not qualified or they do not have the capital for investing in the business. And the third characteristic is that the low paid employment, because they work on the hire and fire policy, and because of the requirement of low skills and the easy entry, work in the informal sector has low returns. The workers who offer their labor are not paid high wages. In fact, the biggest grievance against this sector is that the wages are many times below sustenance levels, and in many cases low wages drive other members of the family into the informal workforce because the mean wage earned is not sufficient for sustaining a household. So in this sense, children too may be encouraged to join the labor force. And the fifth characteristic of the informal labor organizations of work is that according to Hart, is that it is largely composed of the immigrant labor. So Hart found that the informal sector workers in Ghana had come to the city from the rural areas, and as mentioned earlier, workers and small traders in the city came from the rural areas in search of a livelihood. He hence included migrant status as a characteristic of the informal sector. So these are the four characteristics which are noted by Hart and which could be taken as the basic feature of the informal sector. So however, this sector has increased in size as well as in variety, hence these characteristics can no longer be the feature of the informal sector in general, and they could no doubt describe a major section of this sector but not all section. So now we see the concept of transitory nature of the informal sector, because informal sector has a transitory nature. So the features which are laid down by Hart shows that the informal sector is the place where people with little skills find some work, and such a situation is not ideal, especially from the developed countries' point of view. But the reality is different than this. So the underlying belief was that as these countries advance in terms of development, and the features would change, so the spread of educations among all sections of the population will improve skill formation and people will be equipped to get better jobs. So the improvement of the economy through industrialization will throw up new opportunities for skilled workers. Hence, as the economy develops in an industrial economy, the informal sector will be gradually observed by the formal sector, which is not really happens, and in the other words, more people will get regular jobs in large enterprises, and the laborers will be observed in the factories, and street vendors will be observed in the shops, departmental stores and the other forms of retailing, and so on. So the informal sector was thus a transitory sector that would be observed in the sector. So now we will see the reality of this. So the reality is that they were not observed in the formal sector, rather they will grow tremendously. So this is far from reality. We in fact find that the informal sector has grown tremendously, and even developed countries have a growing section of workers who are in the informal sector. So in the cities in the USA and UK, there are a large number of women who stitch clothes or do other types of tailoring activities from home or from illegal factories. So these women are paid low wages and are no different from home-based workers in the developing countries. So they are in most cases immigrant from less developed countries, and their husband do not earn enough to maintain the so they basically not earn enough to maintain the family, and these women have to work in such conditions in order to earn some extra and extra income. So Naila Kabir has done a study of Bangladeshi women engaged in the garment industry in London and Dhaka. So basically the another section of the informal sector is the street vendors, and one will find a growing number of street vendors in most cities in the developed countries mainly, and these in developed countries as well as in the developing countries, and these self-employed pupils are mainly immigrants from developing countries. They work on the street because they are unable to get regular jobs. Street vendors can be found in almost all cities and in developed and less developed countries. So one can find them in crowded marketplace selling a variety of less expensive good and food, and in cities like New York, London, Berlin and Paris one will come across a large number of street vendors selling food, flour and durable goods, and most of these people are immigrants from the developing countries who have migrated in search of better life chances. So the street vendors from a very large section of the urban informal sector in developing countries, and according to the report of Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviations 2013 report, so basically there are 10 million street vendors in India, with Mumbai accounting for 2,50,000, and Delhi has 2 lakh, Kolkata has more than 1,50,000, and Ahmedabad has 1 lakh. So the total employment provided through street vending becomes larger if we consider the fact that it sustains certain industries by marketing their products. So a lot of goods sold by street vendors such as clothes and hosiery and leather and molded plastic goods, household goods and some item of food are manufactured in a small scale or home-based industries, and these industries engage a large number of workers, but they could have hardly marketed their products on their own. So in this way, street vendors provide a valuable service by helping sustain employment in these industries. So then a study on the street vendors conducted by Malcolm showed that the lower income groups spend a higher proportion of their income in making purchases from street vendors, mainly because their goods are cheap and thus affordable. So hence, the street vendors are viewed as a problem for the urban governance. They are in fact the solution to some of the problems of the urban poor. So by providing cheaper communities, street vendors are in effect providing subsidy to the urban poor, something that the government should have done. So now we see a case studies of the garment workers. So basically these studies will enable us to get a better insight into the people engaged in this sector. So the garment industry is one of the largest employers in the informal sectors, and with growing consumerism there is a growth in the demand for clothes, and the industry caters to all income groups, namely manufacturing clothes that will be bought by the poor, and also high priced designer wear for the upper income group. So beside there is an ever growing export market. So till 2005 India faced restrictions on export as important buying countries like USA and European countries has imposed a quota on Indian export of clothes. So basically after India joining the WTO, that is World Trade Organization, these restrictions were phased out. So by January 2005 all restrictions on import of multi-fiber garments by these countries were removed, and this has given India much better opportunity to increase garment export. Hence the export market too is an important component of the garment industry, which is also talked in the economic survey of this year. So basically there are two types of informal workers in this industry. Firstly, those who stitch clothes in small factories, and the secondly, those who stitches clothes from home. So home-based workers outnumber the factory workers. So we can take a brief look at the process involved in garment making. So then Ella Bhatt, founder of Seva, found in her studies in Ahmedabad 2006 that the home-based workers are exclusively women. So they work for contractors who give them work and pay them at piece rates. So in other words, the contractor will give the woman the cloth for making the clothes and will pay them according to the number of garments stitched. So the payment is low. Sometimes they make between rupees 20 to 50 a day, which is very less, and but has shown that the way these women, mostly poor belonging to the Muslim communities, were exploited by the contractors and the buyers of the clothes. So the women had to own the implements of productions like sewing machines, thread, needles, and any other equipments. Thus, extra cost was added to their work. So the other types of worker in this industry are those involved in the small factories, and these workers are different from the home-based workers. They do not work from home, but they work in small factories, and the owner provides them with the machines and other implements. So one can find such factories in industries estate in Mumbai, Delhi, and most other large cities, and the owners usually produce these garments for a large buyer. The clothes manufactured are of superior quality that are either exported or are sold in large retail outlets. So Naila Kabir, a Bangladeshi researcher from Sussex University, has made an insightful study on women garments workers in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and London in 2000. So there are around 20 million women engaged in garment industry, and these women work in the factories that have modern machines for cutting and stitching fabrics. They work for 8 hours and they are paid wages that are a combination of piece and time, and if they work less, their wages are deducted. So in case they work more than the quota, they get some extra money too. So then Kabir mentions that women working in factory gives them autonomy in their lives. So this have several implications. Kabir find that after having an independent income, some of the husband have stopped beating their wives. The women in turn use this extra money for educating their children or for improving the conditions at home. And an interesting finding of Kabir's study is that many of women invest their money on their daughters' education. So this is one of the positive fallouts of working independently, because as in all South Asian countries, in Bangladesh too, the girl child is treated as inferior to the son. So now we see the comparison between formal organizations and informal or unorganized sectors. So the labor force in all developing economies consisted of two broad sectors, the organized and the unorganized sector. In the organized sector, the labor productivity is likely to be high. Incomes even in unskilled category are relatively high, and condition of work and service are protected by labor legislations and trade unions. And the major comparison between these two sectors can be summed up as follows. So the first thing is the market structure. So the large manufacturing firms in the formal or basically organized sector operate in markets where prices are controlled by few sellers, which are protected from foreign competition by high tariffs. So they sell products mainly to middle and upper income groups. On the other hand, the unorganized sector consists of a large number of small producers operating on narrow margins in highly competitive markets, and the products are sold to low income group. So now the second topic or the second point of comparison is the credit facilities. So the organized sectors have greater access to cheap credit provided by the various financial institutions, while the unorganized sector often depends on the money lenders who charge a high rate of interest. So now the third point is the difference is the technology. So the formal organized sector uses capital intensive technologies and imported technology, while the unorganized sector uses mainly labor intensive and indigenous technology. So the fourth point is the role of government. So the organized sector have privileged positions as far as the government is concerned, because it has an easy access to an influence over government machinery. It can build lobbies and pressurize the government on an issue, while the unorganized has no political pull. And the last difference between them is the of protections. So lastly, the organized sector is protected by various types of labor legislations and backed by strong unions of the laborers, and the unorganized sector is either not covered by labor legislation at all or is so scattered that the implementation of legislation is very inadequate or basically ineffective, and there are hardly any unions in this sector to act as watchdogs. So thank you guys for listening me and watching this video. Thank you.